Thom, how would you define spiritual growth and what secrets can you share with us to grow spiritually?
First of all, we have to understand this word spiritual because, what I hear at Erewhon and other places is, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. You hear this kind of stuff being bandied about everywhere. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I like incense and, I like to play, that kind of, groovy music that doesn't have any drum beats in it. And, I like to wear certain kinds of, I'm spiritual. I'm a really spiritual person. So first of all, spiritual doesn't mean a fragrance. Spiritual doesn't mean a style of dressing. Spiritual doesn't mean a certain kind of music. Spiritual doesn't mean, you refuse to shop in a regular shopping center or supermarket, but you have to go to the most expensive ones on earth. Spiritual doesn't mean, a food type. Spiritual has a very specific meaning. It has to do with the word itself, spirit. Spirit means essence. The essence of a thing is the pure status of that thing. So what is your spirit? Your spirit is you, your consciousness, your mind, you, minus all the thoughts. Let's have you with all the thoughts taken away, but still conscious, not sleeping, not the sleeping you, because in most people's experience, the only time they ever can recall maybe having no thoughts is if they were unconscious. But what if you were conscious and having no thoughts whatsoever? What would that be? That's consciousness in its pure state, and that is spirit. And anyone who's experiencing that is having a spiritual experience. If they're not having that, they're not having a spiritual experience. They're thinking a lot. I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that, I'm thinking that, I'm thinking that. So spirituality has to do with experiencing essence, your own essence. In Vedic meditation, we experience our essence twice every day for a considerable number of minutes. We close our eyes using the technique of Vedic meditation. We settle into that vast unboundedness field that is beyond thought. That's spirit. And so anyone who does that regularly is developing spirituality. Now, as we grow in our practice, we begin to notice that in the beginning days, that state of unbounded consciousness could only be there conditional upon us practicing the meditation technique. You're sitting in a chair, you have your eyes closed, you're comfortable, and under those conditions, you can experience the unbounded consciousness field. And so it's limited to time and place where you can set that experience up. But with practice, we begin to notice that deep inner sense of being, and so I'm going to call it now beingness, the spirit, the beingness, that level of you that's beyond thought, begins to persist such that you'll open your eyes at the end of your meditation practice and you still feel largely identified with the beingness, not the thinkingness and the actionness. The actionness and the thinkingness, they're there, but they are not what is primarily defining you anymore. When I look at my primary sense of identification, what is it that I identify as? It's not doings. People often say, oh, I'm one of these because I do sex this way. So I identify as an elbow-rubbing sex person. I identify as one of those. I wear these clothes. I'm a clothes-wearing identity. I identify as one of these. I'm a language-speaking identity. These are all doings. Doing, speaking, dressing, sexuality, all they're doings. They're not being. Other people might identify as a thought type. I'm a French existentialist. Like Albert Camus, I think that the world is meaningless and it's absurd. That's me. I'm a Camus-driven French existentialist. So now they're talking about, my identity is a thinking style. I think this way. But the Vedic meditator knows something that none of these people know, and by direct experience, not just intellectual knowledge. Evidently, I am the unbounded unified field. And with greater frequency than any of these other things present identity to me, with greater frequency, twice a day, regularly, I'm having this experience of becoming one with a totality field. This is spirituality. Spirit is now essence, now is my primary identity. All the other doings and the thinkings and that, they go through change. Nobody, thank goodness, who's listening to this, unless you are a high school student, and if you are, then it'll change. No one ever thinks to themselves today, based on what I thought in high school, I'm that. Fortunately, you know that high school is famously a kind of transitional period where you're trying out various kinds of ways of identifying yourself. So then, when we grow into full maturity, we're supposed to have matured spirituality, which means, when you feel deep inside yourself, what is it that primarily describes you and defines you? If the answer to that is the underlying spirit, the underlying unified field quality, the consciousness field, that's the source of all the thoughts. If that's the answer, then you are spiritual, no matter where you shop, no matter what you smell like, no matter what kind of clothes you wear, no matter what kind of music you listen to. You are spiritual if you're having that experience. And to the extent that you're having that experience, that's spiritual.